you know what I really appreciate about you, cause not everyone, I mean, it's really a hard transition from you being, you know, like a slam poetry. You know what I'm saying? I was raised up around a lot of the, you know, 90s poetry wave. So, you know, artists that come through that poetry, you know, let's call it gauntlet of getting up there and the theatrics and the expression and the purposefulness, as well as, you know, the melody and being able to do it without music, but then transition into doing it with music. But you have was that easy for you because music was always a part of kind of your fabric to make that transition into being not just a poet, but a songwriter too?
Yeah, I started writing songs when I was like 9, and I didn't start writing poetry till I was maybe like 11, 12. And so, like, I taught myself how to play guitar, and I was like writing these angsty ass songs for like my childhood self who was going through so much apparently. But yeah, eventually I just wanted to put my poetry into music, and it didn't make sense unless I was rapping. So I was like a closeted rapper for a minute, which is probably how I got like confident in it before even sharing it with the world. So yeah, it wasn't an easy transition internally because I at the time that I was listening to rap, you didn't call yourself a rapper unless you could rap, and I didn't have that confidence yet to be like I'm a rapper. But in general, in the grand scheme of things, yeah, it was super easy and really like streamlined as to how I got here now.
You put out Full Bloom in 2017. Industry Games just last year. Between those two, like when you transition, right? When you think about what Full Bloom was and when you think about what Industry Games was, what was the learning curve there? Can you just like directly articulate that for young people that's trying to navigate it all and figure out their path?
I think that the main key to doing anything on the internet and anything artistic when it comes to music, art, writing, anything like that is to just do what you feel is right. Because I remember Full Bloom, I'd written a handful of poems in general that I just liked a lot. So I was writing poetry super heavy at that time because I'd taken a step back from the internet. Um, and I was in the car on the way home from my job at Chipotle, you know, Chipotle Palace for life. And I remember being like, you know, this gang, I still ain't got no celebrity card yet. I'm waiting on it, but it's fine. But yeah, no, I
Chipotle got
remember
tripping, man.
they big tripping. I worked so diligently as an employee. It's fine. As the cashier, I kept the tips coming. But yeah, no, I remember being in the car and being like, I want to write, like I want to put out an EP, but like I want to call it Full Bloom because I feel like I'm coming into my own, and this is really before like a lot of the things that people gauge as like my success or like my blow up. It was very much so early on. And I remember being in the car and writing the first poem or the title poem, which is Bloom. Wrote it literally fully in the car on the way from Chipotle to my house. And then I got home, I walked in my closet and I tracked it. And then I put it together and it was just like a thing that I hoped that somebody cared about. If nobody cared about it, I had no issue with that because again, I wasn't in the phases of clout yet. I was just like, all right, cool, I'll put it out, and people resonated with it. And then so fast forward to Industry Games, where I moved out to LA and I had so much on my mind. I was telling my story and how I was failing to process as an artist because I feel like a regular person. Um, it's the same. I think the common thread there is that it was created with the same heart of like I'm telling the truth, and if people fuck with it, they fuck with it, and if they don't, they don't. And that's just the essence of being a person. Not everybody's gonna like you. Not everyone's gonna. You're not for everybody. So like, if my art says the same, that's cool. And if it is received widely by a lot of people, that's great. And yeah, there's people who still bring up Full Bloom. They're like, "Holy, this is the best poetry EP I've heard," and that shocks me because I remember creating it from a place of just like willy nilly, let's put out some art. And then Industry Games I put blood, sweat, and tears into. So it feels a lot more earned to have the critical acclaim that it does.
You went 2020 double XL freshman, Grammy nominated Best New Artist.
Quite a few things happen.
Now, when you look at the nominations for the Grammys this year, people like yourself, Freddie Gibbs, like this
Hmm.
real, just pure hip hop, lyrical, musical representation at this year's Grammys. How do you feel when you look at the way the Grammys is representing this year, with yourself included?
I think that for so much of like my up and coming career, and having to do a lot of things on the internet and Facebook, not Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, a lot of the comments I would see were like, "Oh, she's so talented, but too bad she's never gonna be anything because she's a big girl," or "Too bad she's not gonna get the shine she deserves because she's dark skinned." And I always resented that because I was like, you're the consumer. Why are you buying into that? Like, it's weird. And so, this year, or I guess last year, with everything that happened, it kind of was my, like, moment. Like, I'm in the same category as Best New Artist, which is one of the big four. Um, in a year where I put out my first project, and a week later, the world shut down. Like, I didn't get to tour with my things. I didn't get the one like moment of live music that the world has gotten from that project was the Tiny Desk, which I think is my major reason for the nomination in general. Like, if I'm being honest, a lot of people are like, "It's
Yeah,
everything,"
you
but I'm like,
bodied that.
I we did we low key did okay, but yeah, no. So I don't know. So much took place, and like I'm thinking about all the people in my category, and like it would be a lie to say that I don't look at their success and be like, now how did I end up here in the same category? But then I also think about the Academy and the people who are voting and the fact that a lot of us are tapped into music, tapped into like less about the moment and more about the trajectory, which is why the phrase "best new artist" is a thing. It's not most poppin' artist or like biggest artist of the year or something like that. It's literally best new artist. And in that sense, I'm humbled to be a part of the conversation, even before being able to tour or being able to like show the live set for real to like a crowd of people, or to be able to do more, put out more music in a time where the world shut down. So yeah, no, like it's insane. And I think that there's a lot of valid critique about the Grammys and the way that historically and sometimes present times they handle black artists and black artistry and what they call it and the categories they throw us into. However, I know it sounds biased, but I think for this time they got it right. Like, I hate to say it, I know it's about me, but I think they got it right. Because had I not gotten it, I wouldn't have been surprised. But me getting it also made sense, and so I don't know. It's a really weird slippery slope there with discussing like the Grammys and how everything's panning out. But all I can say is I'm super grateful to be seen, like for real, like as an artist, and to get this head nod so early in my career based off of like one EP. Like it's sick. It's dope.
Now we on to the new project, Once Upon a Time, the
Mm,
fairy tale.
yeah.
You starts with the record Fairy Tales with BJ Chicago Kid. You got Hickory Dickory Dock, Cinderella Part One, Part Two. So you clearly playing with the aesthetic of the fairy tale. Why on this project? Why are you playing with that aesthetic?
So on the first track, the first few words of the EP are fairy tales are stories with lessons and allegories that tell us about the world that should be. But I see no mention of bad shorties and tipping on 40s, no heroes inside a book look like me. And that's kind of summing up literally like what I hope the entire project encapsulates, is that a lot of the fairy tales that we grew up hearing and listening to, X, Y, and Z, they're all European, they're all Eurocentric, they're all white. And I think that there is something to be said about Black people seeing themselves in stories and having lessons and allegories to be able to base their lives off of and see a reflection of themselves. Because um, one quote that I literally was just talking about with my sister last night is that um, if you don't have visibility, you begin to, or if the world lacks visibility, to whoever it does, they begin to feel invisible. And so, like, we're reading stories about Cinderella, and we're reading stories about, like, I don't know, Rumpelstiltskin and all this weird, like, and where are the black people in it? And it's not that we didn't exist, it's just that we were omitted from these stories. And so I don't think that is something that it's something that could have been corrected in my humble opinion. And I know that we have the Black Cinderella, which is dope with Whitney and Brandy, and that's an important piece of my childhood. But the reason it is so important to me is because it was a fairy tale told from a black gaze. Even with the parents being like mixed, there was a lot going on. But it's just a fairy tale told from a black gaze. And so with the project, I hoped to kind of rewrite some of the nursery rhymes and fairy tales that we grew up listening to, and that we haven't really seen ourselves in order to be like, yo, we are the rule, not the exception. And we can't time travel back to the times where these stories are written, because ultimately slavery and also displacement and all kinds of stuff. But if a fairy tale is a fairy tale, meaning it's imagined, then black people should also be able to imagine or reimagine stories that have been told for decades to white kids who can be like, I want to be that. I want to be a princess. I want to be this. I want to be that. Only princess black girls get is Princess Tiana, and she was a frog for 90% of the movie. So, like,
Facts. Wow.
it's a mess. It's a mess. Also, like, this is exclusive knowledge. I'm not even sure if I should say this because who knows if it's happening, but I think it's going to happen because I say so. And, like,
There
I'm
you go.
boss. But
Boss up.
there's going to be a, of course, but I'm sure there's going to be a deluxe version of it because there's a couple songs on it that I think drive the narrative home more that just weren't done in time, or like they were done but not to like the way that I wanted them to be done. You know what I mean? Like, as an artist, when it's like I could really flip this into something special, and so like you sit on it. And with that being said, like, yeah, no, there's plenty of stories that are, or like three or four stories that are missing from this EP, that hopefully we'll be able to I'll be able to shed light on them eventually.
Cinderella Part One, Cinderella Part Two, two different vibes.
Hmm.
Talk us through the thought process before we get in, because we're gonna play them both back to back. But you give us two different energies on track 3 and track 4.
So I'm gonna go ahead and say this, and I know the label's gonna be upset that I'm outing them, but it's fine. They were supposed to be one song because I love a song with a dynamic flip in the middle. That is my thing, and it is something that I have forgiven them for, but also will take to my deathbed. I wanted it to be one song because I think that it serves the purpose more as one song. It got split in half for sinking and business reasons and things, but with the song itself, I'm gonna just call it Cinderella because that's how it was supposed to be. But with Cinderella, the first half is supposed to be clearly like this trap beat, and I'm like walking into a party, and like it's a modern day Cinderella story where I stumble across some girl, like I'm walking around like, who is that? Like, who is she? What's she talking about? And some niggas call her Cindy and the others call her Ella and this thing. And then you hear this entire like this progression through a party where like there's haters in the corner talking about her, and like people are judging her, and she's off to the side doing her own thing because she's freaking Cinderella. She don't gotta worry about these others. And then we get to the kitchen and time stands still. Like everything begins to move slow. Um, and it's only us in the kitchen, and that's when you get what is known as Cinderella Part Two. But it's really just a moment of like finally being with the person that you've been like at the entire party. Because in the beginning, I say, I don't think she in the mood. I'm gonna roll a spliff and gonna wait to make a move. And then randomly stumbling into the kitchen and like the girl of your dreams in there, you're like, oh my god, okay. And you start professing like this love, and I say, I know that you're leaving soon. We're running out of time, but let's create our own reality and shift the paradigm. Meaning, like, none of that matters. Like, nothing that's happening in here matters. Let's literally say, it, all bets are off, and like, try this. Or at that point, it could be on some push. Like, let's leave. Like, let's get the hell out of here. And so yeah, Cinderella is one of those songs, both parts now, but Cinderella is one of those songs to me that is so fully fleshed out. And again, I will forgive them for making it two songs, but had it
Well,
been
we about to
one,
make it one right now. We about to make it one.
period. Period. Because the transition was excellent. And it's also the producer, shout out to Chris McClenny. Um, we produced it with the same chords and like the same, like they were meant to be like a married thing. And so, I mean, I'm glad they come back to back at least. But let's say somebody listening on shuffle, you don't get that resolution of Cinderella Part Two. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, yeah, no, it's one of those special songs to me. It's one that I made just purely off of just being drunk in a car and being like, I want to imagine a fairy tale, and sitting and making a voice memo in 2017 and then getting to LA in 2019, tracking the first half and then finishing it last year in 2020.
Wow.
So that song is a labor of
3 years
love.
in the making.
Yeah, literally from Montgomery to LA to I guess NoHo, whatever you say, but you know, it traveled with me. It traveled with me.
From Montgomery to North Hollywood. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
CHIKA.